This is the second and more advanced of two garnishing videos which take the viewer through the carving techniques essential to the creation of more complex garnishes. Great pains have been taken to clearly show the viewer the precise methods to assure the successful carving of various flowers using the inside to out, outside to in, and slicing techniques. Tools used are scissors, sharp-pointed knife, V-shaped and curved blade carving tools, and skewers. We will use small radishes for the following 7 garnishes. The shape of the garnishes will be determined by the shape of the radish you will carve. Most radishes are oval or round shaped. For the lantern, select a round radish. Use a V-shaped blade carving tool. Vertically carve the petals. The number of petals is not limited. Carve only the first row of petals to make this flower. Soak the garnish in water before use. This is a small round eggplant. Carve the same way as the radish. Use a V-shaped blade carving tool and vertically carve the petals. Add a design on top as desired. This garnish is quick and easy to create with a V-shaped blade carving tool. This is the best choice when you need to make a large quantity of garnishes. For the lantern too, carving techniques here are the same as with the previous garnish. The only difference is the need to hold the carving tool on an angle when carving. This way, you will be able to create an inclined petal flower. Finished garnishes should be soaked in water before displaying. Choose an oval-shaped radish to make the pineapple. Start carving from the middle of the radish. This garnish is similar to the previous lanterns. The only difference is the carving of more rows of petals. You will note the second row of petals are carved in between 2 petals of the first row. Continue following the same technique. The number of rows to be carved is dependent upon the shape and size of the radish. For the round petal flower, slice off a piece about 2/3 up on the stem end of a radish with a sharp-pointed knife. Continue to cut off slices toward the top. The number of layers are only limited by the radish size. Carve the same way on the other 3 sides. This 4 round petal flower is easy for beginners to carve with a sharp-pointed knife, because the position of the petals is easy to control. The first row of petals of the rose is similar to the 4 round petal flower, but here we carve 5 or 6 petals instead of 4 petals. Technically, this is harder than the 4 petals. Successive petals will overlap the prior petals. Alternate the petals between the rows. Petals will become smaller when carving toward the inside row. For the lantern and flower variations, carve 5 petals. The carving procedure of the first row is the same as for the previous rows, but don't overlap the petals. Next, we carve pointed petals on the second row, alternating the petals with the first row. Continue to carve, alternating round petals in one row and pointed petals in the other. For the carnation, cut off the leaf end to let the radish stand. Make cuts from the outside toward the center. Make cuts from the opposite side toward the center. Because the radish is round in shape, do not cut too deeply on the outer layer, so as to avoid cutting all the way through. The more toward the center, the deeper the cut. Turn the radish and cut the same way on the opposite side. Score the top in a crisscross fashion. Score the other side. After completing the cuts, the crisscross will open and look like a red carnation. Now we use the white radish for the following garnishes. Cut the radish in half in order to make 2 flowers. Using the fatter half to shape the chrysanthemum, carve petals around the radish with a V-shaped blade carving tool. This is the same method used to carve the first garnish, the lantern flower. The number of petals is not limited. Diagonally cut around the rim. Trim the sharp edge to make the center into a sphere. By cutting off a slice on top, it will make the outer row of petals more prominent. The second row of petals should be carved in between 2 petals of the first row. Again, diagonally cut around the rim and trim to create a sphere. And again, slice the top. Continue carving the rows of petals as before, alternating the petals between the petals of the previous row. The number of rows to carve depends on the size of the radish. As you can see, the petals are getting smaller and fewer when carved toward the inside. Carve to the smallest petals possible. Remove the small cylinder in the center. Use a larger curved blade carving tool for the broad petal chrysanthemum. Follow the same carving procedure as the narrow petal chrysanthemum. Variations may be created by carving the outside row into broad petals and the inside row into narrow petals. Again, remove the small cylinder in the center, thus completing the flower. Soak the flower in water before use, or color the flower. This flower can be placed in the middle of an appetizer. Deciding where to start the rows depends on how many petals we wish to create. Pare a piece of the radish with a knife and discard the skin. Starting at the same place where the paring began, carve a petal. Use the same method to carve 5 or 6 petals. In this garnish, the first row is the hardest to carve. After successfully carving the first row, subsequent rows will be easier. Diagonally cut around the rim and trim the sharp edge into a sphere. Alternate the petals between the petals of the previous rows. Cut off a slice for the radish, and starting at the same place where the paring began, carve a petal. Follow the same procedure to carve the petals until all of the radish is carved. The number of rows of petals are not fixed. Petals will become smaller in the inner rows. And here is the finished rose. For a pointed petal rose, shape the petals of the outside 2 rows into pointed petals. Also, we may cut small V-shaped grooves around the edge of the first 2 rows of petals. Soak the flower garnish in water until ready for use. Cut a 2-inch section from the celery. With a sharp-pointed knife, trim each stalk of celery into a round petal, cutting on an angle which will make the outside edge higher than the inside. Follow the same procedure to trim the petals from the outside row to the inside row. Trim the petals thinly to emphasize their shape. Trim to the center row and then remove the center piece. Onions are a very simple material which can be used to make an excellent garnish. Remove the skin from the onion and, using a V-shaped blade carving tool, carve a row of petals around the non-stem end of the onion. Only carve the first layers of the onion and do not carve too deeply. Lengthwise, score the surface of the upper part of the onion and remove the top layer of skin from the large section which will show the first row of petals. Carve a second row of petals between the petals of the first row. And again, score the surface of the onion and remove the top layer. Repeat the same procedures for each layer. It is not necessary to soak the finished onion in water. Petals will drop off if the flour is soaked in water too long. Continue carving petals until the onion is completely carved. Finally, remove the last layer of skin to finish the garnish. Choose a straight and thick carrot or white radish to garnish. Let it stand for a few days to soften. Then, cut it into sections. Take a section of the carrot, and on the flat side, carve around the center of the carrot to form a short post with the curved blade carving tool. Slice around the post and remove the excess carrot circle in one piece. Carve out 5 evenly spaced petals around the post of the carrot with the curved blade carving tool. Removing excess pieces of carrot from inside the petals will form indentations. Slice around under the petals and remove excess carrot. This will create the first row of petals. Carve the second row of petals behind the first row using the same procedure. Repeat the same procedures for more layers. The first row only has 5 petals. Petals will be added in each following row. Continue carving to the 5th or 6th row. The number of petals will increase to over 10. Remove the flour from the stem after carving the last layer. Remove excess pieces from the petals of the last layer to complete the flower. This is the same procedure as the round petal chrysanthemum, but we use the V-shaped blade carving tool instead. Also, We can use both a V-shaped blade and a curved blade carving tool alternately to create different effects. Soak this garnish in water until ready for use. For the carrot flower, we will use a section of carrot and, using a V-shaped blade carving tool, cut a groove along the length of the carrot. Continue to cut grooves until you have gone around the carrot. Let the carrot stand for a few days to soften before use. However, soaking in salt water can reduce the time for softening. Trim one end to a cone shape using a sharp pointed knife. Carefully, cut a continuous thin slice around the cone of the carrot for 2 to 3 turns. Be sure the carrot is softened before use to prevent breaking. Roll the slice up into a flower shape and soak in water until ready to use. For the chrysanthemum, select a straight white radish. Cut off both ends, pare and trim to smooth the surface to a round shape. Beginners can use a shorter white radish to practice with. Peel off a long, thin, continuous slice with a thin blade cleaver. A sharp cleaver is best for successful slicing, since a dull cleaver is difficult to control. Take caution to not cut your hands. The length of the slice depends on the size of the flower desired. The average radish flower usually needs about an 18-inch long slice. Fold the radish slice in half lengthwise. Rub a little salt on the radish slice to make it pliable to prevent breaking. Cut desired width strips across the fold. Slice within 1/3 inch from the long open edges. Complete cutting the slice, then roll it up like a jelly roll. Secure the end with a rubber band. And soak the radish in water before use. For the chrysanthemum 2, follow the same procedures as chrysanthemum 1. Fold the slice in half and cut desired width strips across the fold. Slice within 1/3 inch from the long open edge. Open the slice and fold in half lengthwise again, but on a bias. Alternate the strips of each row. Roll it up like a jelly roll. It should now show inclined petals when finished. The small chrysanthemum may be used for the breast of a peacock. To make the fishnet, we will use a 3-inch section of a carrot. We will plunge a steel skewer lengthwise through the center of the carrot. Now remove the steel skewer and replace it with a wooden skewer to protect the cleaver's edge. Cut the carrot to a long rectangular shape. The carrot used here has been let stand for several days. Make cuts the length of the carrot down to the skewer, on opposite sides of the carrot on the same line. Make the same cuts on the other two sides 1/8 to 1/6 inch apart from the first cuts. Follow the same procedure to finish the carrot. The closer distance between the cuts, the more delicate the net will be. Trim the square edges of the carrot to make it round. Hold the thin blade cleaver parallel to the carrot, and using the same procedures as in Chrysanthemums 1, cut a long continuous slice around the length of the carrot. Slice until 1/2 inch to 1 inch of the carrot center remains. Roll up the slice and remove the skewer. Soak the carrot in a mixture of 1 tablespoon of salt and 1 cup of water. You may soak in salt water for 5 minutes or up to a few days. Remove and spread open the soaked net when ready to use. Cut across the grain to the previous cut that was made. Separate and unfold the net. Food coloring in both powder and liquid form can be used. You select the color as desired. You can also use a spray coloring technique. Use a toothbrush and dip it in thick coloring mixture. Then flick it on the garnish flowers. You have now been exposed to the various carving techniques necessary to create more advanced flower garnishes. As always, your skills will become greater with continued practice.